Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for us to be able to welcome the maker of Radio On here tonight, Chris Petit. He's going to briefly introduce the film now and then talk at greater length at the end of the film and answer questions then. So can I ask you to welcome Chris Petit tonight?
I'd like to thank you for coming. This film forms part of a season of British films, but I should point out that there is some German involvement. Its associate producer was Wim Wenders, the German director. It was photographed by Martin Schäfer, who worked as an assistant cameraman to Wenders, and his photography is, as far as I'm concerned, the main feature in the film. It's a film in black and white. What can I say? It's not Manhattan. I'm also told that it's a film that divides its audience, so that I hope that a few of you are left at the end. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say that making the movie nearly killed me, but this is far worse, having to stand up afterwards and justify it. So maybe somebody would like to ask a question. Was there any specific reason for using Bowie's music? Yeah, there were really two reasons. One was I wanted a combination of European and English music, and Bowie happened to sing Heroes in both German and English. And the other is that as the opening piece of music in the film, it was the most ironic track that I could think of to use. And also I liked it. I mean, I think one of the things I was trying to do with the film was to show a sense of a journey in an English landscape, and there are very few films, apart from Mr. Blanding's Drives North, Get Carter, which deal with a sense of a journey in England. The film. Yeah, I mean, maybe that comes from an absence of cinema in this country for a long time, and that if you look at the influence of Wenders on the film, it's largely because he has taken an American mode, which is after all the dominant cinematic mode, and translated it into something European. And that what I got from Wenders' films was the possibility of doing that in this country. English films are normally very static. You think of definitive English films, and they're films like The Servant, which discuss relationships within the context of four walls of a house. And I really wanted to get away from that. I wasn't interested in that kind of very solid discussion of, I mean, it comes down to class after all. I did want a sense of movement, which I felt I hadn't seen in British cinema very much. But whether you can actually do it between London and Bristol, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a motorway which connects it, and it takes an hour and a half to drive there, so the movie becomes, in a sense, a little bit redundant if you look at it realistically. Well, I mean, Wenders' last two films have largely dealt with relationships between two men, and that's pretty much an interpretation of something that has been fairly continuous in American cinema. I wasn't interested in that, and I also wasn't interested in the conventional behavior of the male character in cinema. So once you decide to do that, you're more or less left with a picaresque story. It can only be a story of vague encounters. I didn't want sort of developing relationships. You know, I mean, maybe at the end of the scene with Sting, there's a possibility that Sting kind of gets in the car and they go off together. I mean, I wanted to cut that off quite deliberately, which I think makes it perhaps a little bit difficult in some senses, but I mean, I really felt that the film was, I mean, for me it was very hard to think up a story. I mean, I had images, and I didn't want the thing to develop too much, because there's a certain kind of development of relationships which is so common in American cinema that I wasn't interested in. I was very concerned not to make a sort of pastiche of an American film. Maybe I made a pastiche of a European film, but I'm not sure. Not so much because there are English ironic remarks which are lost on a German audience, but what I wanted was it was really just a gag with language, and that there's not actually that much in the German, which is completely ironic. I mean, you sense that it's two people talking about someone else and laughing at them. I mean, that's the point of one particular small scene. What they actually say is not important. There were 5, I think. Well, yes, and until you just said that, I had forgotten about the televisions. I think what I wanted in the particular sequence in the beginning was in the beginning I wasn't concerned with realism at all, and I wanted a flat which gave absolutely nothing away about the people who lived there. Most people's houses that you go to, they're kind of very carefully defined. There are always sort of little bookshelves. You sort of look at their books. The furniture is more or less the same, and I wanted a very bare flat. And I thought, well, what could someone actually collect, which was entirely useless? You don't need more than one TV set. And I thought, well, maybe there's perhaps somebody who collects TVs. It was a gag essentially, rather than anything profound. Yes, I wanted to make it in a sense, in that a lot of cinema is actually to do with relationships, even relationships breaking down. Again, I thought that would force me in a direction that I wasn't particularly interested in. But what I was more interested in, rather than just isolation, was a sense of dislocation, the feeling of the way that you look at landscapes and the place that you live in. And this again was something that, I felt from British cinema I really saw very little in movies that related to what I actually saw. There's a tradition of making films in this country which tends to be sort of pastoral, and I really don't think the countryside, the country that we live in, is so beautiful. I mean, London is a huge sprawl. It's a city with no centre, and there's a lot that you choose not to notice every day when you go out into the streets. And that was the main reason for choosing a foreign cameraman, because I felt that he would notice things that you and I wouldn't notice. It's more or less the same as when you go abroad, and somehow you sort of see much more than you do in your own country when you go out of your front door. So the feeling of dislocation rather than isolation was important to me. And it comes from Kraftwerk. They delivered it when they were going off to New York to receive some award, apparently. And I liked it in that it seemed to be as much a summary as anything of the film's intent. Although I think maybe in this print you couldn't read it very clearly. The black and white came about for a number of reasons, and none of them were for financial reasons. When I was looking for locations, I took some photographs driving down the Westway in London. Some were in colour and some were in black and white. And no one really expressed any interest at all in the ones in colour. They sort of looked at it and said, oh, it's the Westway. And the ones in black and white, they sort of said, oh, where's that? Is it Paris? And there was kind of an interest. And what I was just talking about now, about the sense of dislocation, was also important, to see it in black and white. And the other thing was, since I'd never made a film before, I was worried that I would be distracted by colour, where I was more interested in the framing. So I thought maybe black and white would be best. And then Wim Wenders said that the script was the most black and white script he'd read. So I thought, well, I'm not sure how he meant it. Yeah, in a sense, calling the daughter Alice was a gag I put in for myself. I really didn't think that it would be picked up on quite so much. Yeah, but I still didn't think so much would be made of it. I mean, I did put it in as a gag. But the reason I wanted to use Lise Kreutzer was because I thought that in Wender's films she had a presence which I can't really think of any other actress from the last 10 years of having. And the last person I can think of is Karina in Godard's films. and for me it was very important to have her in the film, although I knew that it would kind of reinforce references to Wenders, which on the whole I was nervous about, because I didn't set out just to make a pastiche of Wenders films, or a sort of overt homage. It'll be in colour. I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure that people sometimes say to me, this is really a downer, but I think that I didn't actually set out to make a sort of totally pessimistic film, and I think that the music does act as a counterweight to the feeling of fragmentation. But then on the other hand, you read the kind of summaries for the decade in the papers, and you think, I mean, this is far worse than anything that I've shown. And I think perhaps by nature the English are actually rather depressed, and certainly have been for the last 10 years in terms of the zeitgeist or whatever. Well, in deference to Sting, he was unknown when we did that. But I mean, I didn't want the. I thought quite a lot about the clothes and how he should look, and I didn't want it to be particularly contemporary. I mean, we combed his hair like Kirk Douglas, which I thought was pretty unfashionable, and we made him wear a suit which at the time wasn't fashionable. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. And the jackets at the time were, I mean, it was more a reference back to things like the Wild One rather than the fact that people were starting to wear them. So I was hoping that the kind of the way he looked and the fashion wouldn't either anticipate anything or wouldn't be particularly contemporary, but just kind of a little bit strange. And well, we fell down there. Yeah, he well, this guy called Andy Byatt turned up, and I talked to him, and he's fairly tough, and he looked at me as though to say, well, what a prat. And I thought this is exactly what I was looking for, and I talked to him quite a lot, and he spent a long time hanging around with squaddies in bars, going down to the army recruitment office, and he wanted to go to Belfast, but we didn't have the money nor the insurance. And he virtually rewrote the part. He came back with it, I looked at it, and we changed a few things. And then the way that we shot it was to not tell the main actor how much we were changing. There was an edge of violence in the original script, which he kind of took one stage further. So what you actually see on the screen is the other actor reacting to what was actually going on, and he didn't have the faintest idea. But yeah, he virtually was responsible for all of that. Well, they're all on Stiff Records, and we didn't deal with Stiff Records. I mean, one of the things about the music is that it was not possible to pay the normal kind of rights that you would pay going through the mechanical copyright protection society of the people you normally deal with. And after the first draft, I kind of chucked out all the everyone's favorite classics, because I just thought there was no way of getting the money to pay for them. So I thought, well, it should be a combination of German, English music, or European and English music. And I liked quite a lot of the stuff that Stiff had done, particularly Reckless Eric. And I thought, well, there's actually enough from Stiff that I could use in the film. And so we did a deal with Stiff. Lucky Number was coming up the charts as we were shooting. They offered us Rumour. I wanted Devo, but at first it wasn't possible because they'd gone over to Virgin. And then they came back later and said, yeah, it was okay, so I put it in at the end. But it was a combination of deliberate choice and what was available. We tried to do a deal with radar, but they wouldn't have it. So there was going to be one line of Elvis Costello which never appeared, which was from watching The Detectives. Yeah, I mean, my problem is I've seen the film so many times now that I have I really have no personal reaction. I mean, I'm down to watching the sort of left-hand corner of the screen and sort of trying to find things I've never noticed before. But I'm always quite surprised when people do say that they find it pessimistic, because I do think that there are things in it which are... And for me, the music at the end is, I mean, optimistic, and the landscape is optimistic, and in one sense, I didn't want any kind of overt symbolism in the film at all. I wanted, a jukebox to be just a jukebox. I wanted a road sign to be just a road sign. The stop sign was more or less put in at Andy Byatt's insistence. He was the guy who played the Scottish deserter, and he saw a rough cut of the film, and he came back and he saw another cut, and he said, "You took out the stop sign." So I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, it was, things were getting a little bit slow." And he said, No, that shot has got to be in the movie." And I said, "Why?" And we talked about it a little bit, and he said, "No, it's so important." And I never understood why, but I sort of, it's a very brief shot, and I thought, well, okay, it could go back in because it was possible to cut from the sign straight to the door opening, and it was put in because it was a better cut than the other one that I had. But there was no sort of overt symbolism. Although towards the end, Martin Schaefer wanted to shoot a road sign which said Providence 1 mile, and I had to stop him. I said, it's misleading.